Welcome to the Troy Stoeber Show. You don't have to listen, but you're going to hear about it anyway.
You don't have to listen, but you're going to hear about it anyway. This is the Troy Stoeber Show, and I'm your host, Troy Stoeber. We have a very special guest in the studio today. Her name is Genviev St. Clair. And Genviev, get us started. I want to know a little bit about you, but I would describe you as sort of a Renaissance woman because you dabble in lots of different areas. And I know your focus is hypnosis. Maybe you can start by just giving us a little background about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, it all started because I had no other choice but to learn at a very early age how to use my brain in a different manner, how to use my brain to survive extraordinary adversity, to survive the unsurvivable. My skull was fractured. I had multiple severe traumatic brain injuries at a very early age, 4 years old and on. And so I stumbled time and again through the course of my early childhood upon the phenomenon known as peritraumatic dissociation, which is actually when you're faced with extraordinary harm and you have ran out of options to protect yourself. Basically, your mind will split from your body and you enter the realm of the subconscious mind where you no longer feel any physical pain, no matter what's happening to your body, and you no longer feel any emotions either. So you're looking at whatever is happening from a place of absolute peace. And that is frankly extraordinary to experience. I don't wish it upon anyone because it means that you're literally in the realms between life and death. But when you crossed into that realm of the subconscious mind where you're watching the scene free of any forms of emotions in an absolute radical acceptance and non-judgmental way, and you're completely peaceful, you're entering the realm of the absolute incredible capacities of that force of life that is within you to rise above adversity. So basically, my specialization is to help people resurrect from the obliteration of adversity, from the ashes of adversity that leaves you completely destroyed, rise again and rebuild a life, the quality of which will far surpass anything you've known in the past. So that was my very beginning start, if you will, in how I became fascinated by that realm of the mind that is above and beyond what we're taught initially. And so from a very early age, with harsh conditions, obviously, I read a lot because that's what I had access to. So I started reading about the brain and the mind and how to access that place of extraordinary potential. Mm-hmm. And so I never stopped studying. So by the time I was 15 years old, I was already hypnotizing classmates, helping them learn how to overcome blocks and obstacles. My focus was always therapeutic. It was never the tricks. It was always how do we help ourselves when we have issues and problems and obstacles and blocks. And then by the time I was 17, I graduated from the Silva Institute of Psychoorientology in Paris. So that's the famous mind control Silva
Indeed.
organization that is really the basis of hypnosis. I have a practice in Oregon. In fact, when I landed in Oregon, the Pacific Northwest, breathtaking beauty, natural beauty of the Pacific Northwest. The Pacific Northwest adopted me. And so, and I found here in Oregon, there is this magnificent collaborated care approach. So I was very surprised to find this absolutely magnificent exchange and collaboration with the medical field. I work extremely closely with physicians, psychiatrists, medical doctors, chiropractors, nurse practitioners, on the conditions of their patients. Basically, when members of the medical field send me their patients, it's because no other approach has been successful. So I am sent the complex cases that are typically resistant
You're the backstop.
to treatment.
You're the backstop.
I'm the last option.
But in many cases, it's very effective. And tell me about the power of being able to go back and correct the effects of trauma. Because, like you said, this radical acceptance from a non-judgmental place. I mean, to me, that's extremely powerful to change or to affect a change upon your life.
Absolutely.
There was a doctor who I'm familiar with, Nadine Burke-Harris, who talks
love her
about
works.
the power of trauma and the impact that traumatic childhood experiences have on you. So if you can go back and from a safe vantage point, observe, analyze, and correct things, what possibilities exist? So
Yes, it's a magnificent field, and I love that you just mentioned Nadine Burke. She took over the research study that was developed
ACEs study.
ACEs study, Adverse Childhood Experiences study, that demonstrated that adverse experiences happening to us at an early age change the architecture of the brain and typically lead to life-lasting results in our health over the course of a lifetime. It's an impactful, deeply impactful study, and I've researched it. I've spoken about her work and the work of the doctors of Kaiser Permanente and the CDC, who initially started that study in the mid-90s. I spoke about that on my YouTube channel extensively. So basically, what I do is I help people forensically go back to the causes for the issues they're struggling with today. So we don't just go back to investigate for
Random
no
things.
reason. Exactly. Some people tell me, I'd like to know what happened when I was 2. I said, no, tell me what problem you have today. And we let the mind, from the problem that we're struggling with, whether it's fear, whether it's stress, whether it's lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem, lack of self-worth, because when we're emerging from early life traumatic experience, our self-worth is shattered. We have fractures in our internal sense of self. And how can you lead, not to mention successful, but a quality life if you have a fractured self fabric, right? So that's the core. That's the first thing we address. And when we go back in time, it's absolutely extraordinary. Quantum physics tells us that time and space are illusions, that is our brain translating, and that, time can be folded. And really that's what we do when we take a current issue, like a conviction that I am not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm faulty, why am I this way, I should have been that way. These are false beliefs. These are false beliefs that were placated onto us, stuck like labels onto us by others around us who didn't have any other ways to, didn't know any better, didn't have any other ways to help us
to
discover our
me,
truth.
the dissociation is a very functional thing. I mean, it helps us. It's really a
Survive.
survival technique.
Absolutely. Coping.
And so, at first, that's what you need when you're a young person. That you're just trying to get by. When you get into adulthood, it's time to kind of consolidate and center yourself a little bit. And now the neuroplasticity comes into play, because what once was something that worked very well for us and helped us survive now is just detrimental to our creativity, to our leadership, to our ability to communicate, all the things that normally adults need.
Absolutely. Yes, and that's a good point, because when we experience peritraumatic dissociation on the spot, on the moment, as you said, it's a life-saving mechanism in the way that means that your body and emotions are experiencing a level of harm and distress, physical pain, that you wouldn't be able to process. So your mind splits out. So it's magnificent on the moment. It's extraordinary. But if you experience it repetitively, especially, it becomes a habit. And then you start to dissociate at moments, especially in adult life, where you shouldn't dissociate, because you need to be engaged and involved in your physical body in order to defend yourself, in order to interact. And when you start to dissociate repetitively, it becomes a critically damaging behavior.
And it becomes sort of a second nature, sort of unconscious default pattern, because the more you do it, the quicker and easier it becomes a problem. So I think there are actually some adults who just really don't even know, they don't really know any other way. They just kind of always assume that their thought patterns and their reactivity and their approaches were always healthy, but in fact they may not be.
Right, and actually you're talking about something that's really interesting too, is when we have a wound, even without talking about peritraumatic dissociation, but when we are wounded, let's say at 4 years old or 6 or 12, we establish a response, knee-jerk reaction, that at that time was the only thing we could think of.
Yes.
And it worked to get the attention of mommy or daddy or whatnot at that moment in time. But then we grow up into adults, and when those wounds are not addressed, if somebody's poking into that wound unconsciously, because of course they don't know, you're going to react not based upon your emotional fabric and evolution of today. You're going to react upon the age of the original wound. And that's when you find yourself reacting with mechanisms that are not skillful and that actually
Very primitive.
damage you.
Very primitive. And they
immature. Immature ways of
I'm not going to say who here might be very immature at heart, but that was a learned response. So,
Well, and we all carry, nobody, of course, there's no such thing as perfection. As we go through the course of our journey, we get chipped and wounded and pushed around. And so we develop these responses. And so now we're going into physics.
I call them kind of potentiations. Like the more it happens, the more the brain sort of facilitates it. I think you used the analogy of like snow and skis, kind of like making deeper grooves.
Which is actually Newton's law of motion. Newton's first law of motion: an object in motion tends to stay in motion. It's basically physics. The more we do something, the more fluent we become at doing this thing, the more we're establishing a neural pathway in our brain. And so it's like a groove in the sand or in the snow. If you're taking a wheel or a ski or any moving object and you're starting to do a groove, so at the beginning you're forcing your way through the terrain, but the more you do it, the smoother it becomes and the deeper it becomes. And now the more difficult it is to get out of that groove and start doing another groove. And that's where I step in.
Are you saying that old habits die slowly? Is that what you're saying? Is that why it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks because they're just used to?
It's not hard, but it's just you have to find the right knowledge to do that, to change the groove. So it's actually easy, but you have to know how to do it, which nobody teaches us, until we find ourselves face against the wall and nothing else has worked, and that's when people come to this work.
I am familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, and some of the therapists that they try to sort of fake it till you make it. So they'll take you out of your groove and help you kind of see things from a different perspective, or challenge you, or do that initial kind of uncomfortable work. But if you fake it till you make it, what you're doing is you're starting the tedious, slow, repetitive process of making new healthy grooves, which is what your goal is with hypnosis, correct?
Right. And there's a difference also, because when you're working with traditional talk therapy, whether it's CBT, DBT, traditional psychotherapy, you're basically working with the conscious part of the mind. And that's the tip of the iceberg of the force within. It's the thinking, planning, plotting part of the mind, the conscious part of the mind. And you can actually understand something deeply, very well, understand every aspect of it and know where it comes from and why you're responding this way and how you would want to respond, and still not be able to feel differently, because feeling part of the mind is the subconscious part of the mind. So when we work with hypnosis, we're actually bypassing the conscious part of the mind, going back to the deep sea diving idea. I love that metaphor of the iceberg, because as a deep sea diver, I'm in my element under the surface in water. So when we work with hypnosis, we're diving below the conscious level of the mind, and we're going to the emotional fabric, the feeling part of the mind. And when we're able to reverse the direction, that massive force, your subconscious mind is regulating your heartbeat, is regulating your circulation, it's regulating your cell regeneration, your breathing, all of it absolutely effortlessly. Imagine how powerful it is. While your conscious mind can only do one thing at a time when you're implementing effort. So the force of your subconscious mind is what we work with when we work with hypnosis. We're going down below the conscious level to address the feeling fabric of your life forces within your body. And that's why we have such rapid results.
If our viewers had questions about how to get a hold of you, or some of your online products and stuff, maybe you could give us a little pitch about that.
Yes, absolutely. So the first way to work with me is if you'd like to have the most powerful The most personalized approach is to work with me one-on-one. And so you can do so by contacting me through my website. That's genvievhypnosis.com. And you can contact me directly there. All work these days is remote. So I work with you, with anybody who is interested, from the safety and security of your own home, on camera, on Zoom, Skype, whatever modality is best for you. So that's one-on-one. And then I have a very large library of educational content. There's audio sessions that you can download with my voice, and it's studio recording with full sound effects, and it's just magnificent. So that you can own it. Actually, here is one of my audios right here. I don't know if you can see it well, but you can download this. Today we don't do the CDs since nobody has CD players anymore.
Just do it electronically.
But exactly, you can download this. I have books. I'm actually releasing this month a brand new book. It's my first time release of my signature approach. I'm so excited. We're finishing it right now with the jacket and everything. That teaches you how to do what I do yourself. I'm really big on empowerment. Mm-hmm. And even when I work with people one-on-one, I teach from the first consultation. I teach everybody how to understand how to work with your mind, how to do what I do yourself, so you become rapidly empowered. So that's one-on-one, and then product. And then, of course, we have a library of educational content on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/GenvieveTV. It's a partner, YouTube official partner channel since 2020. I was so excited to be nominated as an official YouTube partner.
YouTube is so accessible, and it's easy to get your name out, and you can have such a widespread positive effect on people's lives. That's amazing. Wow.
And that's accessible, obviously, 24/7. So you don't need to be able to reach me. So youtube.com/GenvieveTV, you have the library of contents, including some sessions there that you can do. And then on Instagram, I have released a number of what I call lightning fast brain rewiring loops. They're a few seconds long, and they play in loop over and over until you decide you click out of them. And I love that because you can play them over your own music if you're running or doing chores. And so you have one for relaxation, you have one for empowerment, you have one for radical acceptance, which helps us deal with things.
Excellent.
And then there is events. Also, I'm on tour this year, so we're doing public events. There's the career, which we were talking about earlier on.
Becoming a hypnotist.
Exactly. For those of you who decide that you'd like to take it even further, and either just for your own knowledge or help your family and friends or become a professional, I'm a board-certified educator with the largest organization in the field of hypnosis in the world. So when you work with me, it's a 100-hour course, and we also do this at your own time, according to your own schedule. And after you're done with that 100-hour course, you have a written exam, and then you become certified as a professional consulting hypnotist.
That would be absolutely enthralling. That would just be so interesting to me. In fact, I think many of my viewers would like to see you just hypnotize me here on the podcast, but we're not going to do that.
And so if you're interested in any of these aspects, you can email me at Genvieve@GenvieveHypnosis.com, or you can text me also, sending your name, email address, and phone number to 503-887-8034.
We'll put that up on we'll put it up on the screen for all of our viewers. Oh, that's amazing! On today's version of the Troy Stoeber Show, Genvieve has come up with some vocabulary words and some artwork for us to enjoy. So you take it away.
Yes. So I thought we would do a different vocabulary section to bring more interest to the audience, different kind of perspective.
Excellent.
So we can start with Latin, one of the dead languages that fascinates me. I always love to put Latin in all of my books because it's magical. It contains its own power. And being a professional,
I'm a scientist. I'm a scientist, and that's the language of science. So
we have some vocabulary words in Latin.
Okay.
So first of all, who is familiar with the word apricus?
Apricus. Latin word apricus.
Which has a lovely meaning of saying full of sunshine.
Full of sunshine.
Apricus, to bask in the sunshine. And then we have the opposite, crepusculum. Crepusculum, which in English you say twilight. In French, we say le crépuscule, so you notice how close it is from the Latin.
But you pronounce that so amazingly. Crepusculum.
That's my French coming through.
I love that. And twilight is such a beautiful time of day, too. So
I know, it's that magic in between the
especially in Portland, especially this time of year. It's like just beautiful lighting. The rest of the day, it's just harsh and shadows. But at twilight, it's quite beautiful. I like that. So.
And then we have pour les siècles des siècles in French, which in Latin comes to per omnia saecula saeculorum.
Per omnia saecula saeculorum.
Excellent. For the ages and ages and ages, which means for all of eternity.
Timeless?
Basically. Yes. The essence of timelessness of the Latin language itself. And then we have manus in mano, which is translated by hand in hand. Manus in mano. And another one, which is inspiring, amor vincit omnia.
Amor vincit omnia.
Love conquers all.
Okay, well, you got an A for your vocabulary because this is all very inspirational. And the thing is, I'm definitely going to have to repeat these.
Per omnia saecula saeculorum.
We're gonna make grooves, and eventually this is gonna be part of my everyday.
Love it. You know, I even brought like a little. You know, here's a good quote. Dulcius ex asperis.
Dulcius ex asperis.
Excellent. Which means adversity makes victory all the sweeter, or sweeter after difficulties. Dulcius ex asperis.
Genviev is not short on inspiration. I mean, it's just one big smile ever since you walked into the podcast room. So, this is...
Thank you. Verba volant scripte manent. Les paroles s'envolent in French. Les paroles s'envolent, les écrits restent. Verba volant scripta manent. Which means, you know, whatever you say out loud just flies away. But when you put things in writing, you're transferring a legacy that remains.
Is this what inspired you to write your first book?
Well, you know, I've been a reader in childhood because, you know, that's what I had access to. And I was told I started writing before I even knew how to write. So I would just fill out pages and pages and pages of letters before I knew how to write. I was compelled to just write, and then I've written poetry anthology, Emotions, many moons ago, decades ago, and I've co-authored the Chicken Soup for the Soul book, which I'm going to be signing at the upcoming event. Chicken Soup to inspire the body and soul. Motivation and inspiration for, living a life of quality.
One of these days, Troy Stoeber is going to make a book, and it might be like a children's book or something.
Oh,
but
I love that. That's good.
That's about my.
I love it.
That's my brain power. But,
I love it. It's really important.
What's interesting is all the things we learn that we don't necessarily know we're learning, and all the ways in which that affects us that we don't always know how it's affecting us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, for sure.
You just kind of assume when you're a child that that's normal. The experience that you have is just what everybody has. So
yeah, biology of beliefs, and then a belief becomes a conviction, and then it changes the way you act and react and the way you experience the world around you. So absolutely.
So you can do what most people do, which is very carefully and methodically and with great effort and mighty strength try to pull those filters off one at a time. Or you can talk to Genviev St. Clair, and you can just take a little shortcut back around the wall and get back into the what's behind
and open up the
behind the curtain.
And they finally discover a life worth living, because it's the most important thing is being able to appreciate quality of life. And when you release all of the blocks and limitations, the pain, the sorrow, the grief.
Some people don't even know what they're missing.
Exactly. That's when you discover.
What's the artwork?
So artwork.
I like this one. Okay, I saw this one.
We have. Look at this. From the Tao Te Ching.
This will be coming up on your screen, ladies and
Lao
gentlemen.
Tzu.
That's beautiful.
Anticipate the difficult by managing the easy. So, one of the ways that is so obvious that we can do this, I teach people how to resurrect from extremely damaging circumstances and events and damaging relationships. And when you use education to recognize the signs, the red flags, the pattern, you can avoid all of the trauma by recognizing before you plunge into it what you're facing. So that's one of the clear examples of managing avoiding the difficult by managing the very easy. Seeing the red flags, educating yourself, and then recognizing what it is and not entering into it, which after you're immersed and literally swimming and sinking into it, it's going to be much more difficult.
Once those grooves are really, really deep, it's hard to get a different perspective. It's hard to see kind of where you are. You just, it sort of becomes part of who you are. And that's what I was just saying before. I mean, some people don't understand even how things that happened to them a long time ago, traumatic things, are affecting them still today. So, if you can, I mean, to me, it's a daunting task when you see the enormity of the change that has to happen. But if you can manage the small things, eventually there's a little bit of momentum and a little cascade that happens, and then you start to realize, oh, you know what? Things that I always believed before aren't always true in the same way that I always believed them to be. So.
I know. And sometimes we have, and I can tell you from first experience too, we are seeing an enormity of a task. Like you said, it feels like a big monster. And we think, how can I possibly remove that? And sometimes it's a misperception. And once you work with it, you can release it in ways you never imagined possible. A lot of the time we see results after just one session. I mean, enormous results. So it doesn't have to be as difficult as we think it might be. Another, and that's from Lao Tzu, that beautiful wisdom.
Okay.
Another beautiful wisdom by Lao Tzu is, to the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders. It's so powerful.
Okay, so that's, and I mean, one of the most fundamental misconceptions is that power is a very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Yang energy, action-oriented energy.
Very sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
It's very disorganized, or from a standpoint of
with an enormous effort. Yeah,
and
what you resist persists. So a lot of time, the harder the effort, the more the resistance, the lesser the result.
Okay.
And so when you think about water, for instance, the most absolutely non-resistant element in the planet, at the same time is the most powerful element in the planet. Think about that.